Welcome to the Talk of Simsbury. My name is Dominique Avery. Today, the talk is about the Talcott Mountain Music Festival, which is in Simsbury for its 22nd season. Joining me today, as he did last year, is Steve Collins, formerly the Artistic and Operations Director of the Hartford Symphony, but now he has a new title. He is now the Executive Director. Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you back.
Thank you, Dominique. It's a pleasure to be here.
And joining him for the first time this year is Jarek Liss, and he is the HSO's personnel manager, and he's also the second violin. Right. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. So I'm really glad to have you here again to talk about the Talcott Mountain Music Festival, and it's always one of the major highlights in the town of Simsbury, so we like to promote it. Steve, a lot of things have happened since we talked a year ago. You have a new job title. So what happened there?
Well, it has been a very busy year indeed. On April 1st of 2016, I became the executive director of the orchestra, like you said, and it's a tremendous honor. You know, I'm having a great time. We have a tremendous staff, a really dedicated board of directors, wonderful, marvelous musicians, you know, working very hard, and a public that has demonstrated their support for the orchestra. So it's a great time, and I think we have great opportunities in front of us. We just need to be prepared to capitalize on those opportunities when they come our way.
One thing that you didn't mention since we talked last year, you've signed a new assistant conductor. Tell me a little bit about him. I think his name is Adam Kerry Boyles. Tell me.
Right. So Adam Kerry Boyles is, like you said, our new assistant conductor. He has already done a couple of concerts for us, a Discovery children's concert, and he'll be joining us at Talcott this summer for 3 concerts. He is from the Boston area, where he runs the orchestra program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I think he'll be a wonderful asset to the organization. Aside from conducting a number of concerts, he'll also be really heavily involved in creating our education programming, and especially those Discovery concert programs and related activities.
So is he going to be staying in Boston? Or?
Yes, yeah. He lives in just north of Boston. I forget which town exactly, but he'll be staying there with his family. He has a beautiful young family, and coming down to Hartford for engagements and to work with donors and the staff and the whole thing.
So what was it about him that I'm sure you interviewed and saw other assistant conductors? What was it about him that was special that caught your eye?
You know, it's a really tough job. It's a really varied job description. The successful candidate needs to be able to work really well with the orchestra, have really great artistic ideas, but also be really adept at meeting with donors and presenting the orchestra in an effective way, verbally and in written communication as well. So it's a wide variety of skills. Maybe you can talk about his audition conducting the orchestra, Jarek.
Well, Adam's audition was really tremendous, and I even remember him from the concert he has done before he auditioned for the position, and I remember him quite well from the previous concert. He did one of the Discovery concerts maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he has a very unique way of combining certain incisiveness of his artistic vision, as well as he is very good about how he gets really best out of the people. So it was pretty striking and obvious right away that he knows what he wants artistically, and it's very easy to work with him. So we really enjoyed working with him.
So now that's a really interesting, what you raised is a really interesting issue with people who don't know anything about conducting or music. They look at someone, does it really make a difference who does that? So obviously it does, and so maybe we can talk a little bit about that before we get into the, how does a conductor make a difference?
Well, I'll go to you, Jarek.
Well, I would say that it's a certain level of musical awareness, and as well as alertness that needs to be, happening as one is conducting, and Adam definitely has those features as an artist. So you could tell right away when he was conducting Prelude to the Afternoon of the Faun that he knew exactly what is happening, not only in the dominant parts of the score, but like he knew the score, very well. Yes, and then it was also very, Prelude to the Afternoon of the Faun is probably one of the pieces that can really test conductor's ability, because from the technical standpoint, you have to perform many different beat patterns, and also you deal with a lot of tempo changes. So in that short piece, you can really tell very well if one has the required chops as a conductor to do it, but also you can judge the musicality and and also to a certain extent, like the naturalness of the approach. So it's a perfect piece, to audition somebody.
So is it in the way he looks at you and sort of, or moves his hands, or his body language, or is it some of all of that? What is it? This is really interesting, a tutorial for people about conducting.
Well, if I may.
No, please.
So there will be moments as the piece is flowing where a lot of things will be sort of happening on its own, and they don't require intervention of the conductor. But then there will be moments when he or she could be very helpful, and help the process. So the way you judge it, if the conductor is aware of that and knows like when those moments come, and is turning to a right instrument or a right group of instruments, or then that's absolutely one of the signs. And then they can be sometimes very subtle, and the body language is very important, and
right.
Certain people are naturally it comes to them a little easier to present gestures, and to some it doesn't. So Adam is one of the lucky ones.
Absolutely. I think it's really easy to underestimate the skill that goes into the physical gestures. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, it may be easy for some audience members to kind of watch the back of the conductor and just kind of assume right. that it's just kind of going along, but there's real skill that goes into the precise way that they communicate through especially the gestures with their hands and their arms. Mm. A downbeat is not always the same every single time. There's subtle differences that right. the musicians are really attuned to, and there's a real amount of skill there. And
at least I've observed facial expressions are also
sure.
important.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this year's list of concerts. And get an overview. They're being billed this year as 5 Fridays of Fun. So you're starting with Celebrate America, July 1st. So that's the traditional concert with patriotic songs?
Correct.
And Adam's going to be conducting that?
Right, so Adam will be conducting the 1st, 4th, and 5th concerts. So we'll start with Celebrate America, and this is a traditional program, somewhat similar to what we've done before out here in Simsbury. Americana, patriotic tunes, military tunes, a little bit of Frank Sinatra, a little Duke Ellington, some John Williams movie music, kind of something for everyone. And of course, concluding with our traditional 1812 overture and fireworks. That'll be great.
And then the next concert, the next week, is July 7th, and that's Starlets, the Women of Song.
It's July 8th.
Oh, what did I say? I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. I wrote it down wrong. Thank you for correcting me. July 8th, that's a week after July 1st. I'm very bad at math. So what's that? That's right. Very pop-oriented.
Right. So Starlets, the Women of Song, features three wonderful women with fronting the orchestra that pay tribute to the great pop hits of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s from female entertainers, ranging from the Supremes, Aretha Franklin, Donna Summer, Madonna, Alicia Keys, Adele, Whitney Houston, kind of the big female stars.
And then the next weekend, which if I have it correct, it's the 15th. Carolyn Kwan's going to be there, and she's going to be doing sort of the classical music concert with Copeland, and I saw some Mozart. Tell me a little bit about that, or you tell me, or somebody tell me.
Right. So, yeah, like you said, our music director, Carolyn Kwan, will be with us, and we're going to be featuring I think a really great program. We'll be playing Copeland's Appalachian Spring in its original format. It was originally scored for a chamber ensemble of about 15 players, I think. It's kind of more commonly performed in the full orchestration, but the chamber version I think is really great because it shows off all the kind of delicacy of each of the lines, and each instrument is essentially a solo instrument with a small string section. So it really shows off the virtuosity of our players, I would say. Would you agree, Art?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might have done it once before in a very small, the small version, and it's very different from playing the full orchestra version.
And it's really difficult too, right?
Yeah, obviously, everybody. You don't have doubled string parts, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's a wonderful piece, and I think Copeland is one of the underappreciated composers. Absolutely of the world stature.
I would agree. Also on that program, we're going to feature a Connecticut pianist named Andrew Armstrong, who's a wonderful performer, a good friend of mine. He'll be playing a Mozart concerto, I believe number 17 in G major, and we'll wrap it up with a Tchaikovsky Serenade for strings in C major. So it's a great opportunity to feature our core musicians as it is, and Andrew, a great friend and artist.
So will that be a smaller orchestra?
Yes. So that's the total instrumentation is about 33 musicians. The other programs feature orchestras of around 50 to 60 players.
Okay, so now we're 7 days later, and I saw that there's a tribute to Ray Charles.
Right. I am so excited about this because I just love the music of Ray Charles. I grew up listening to it with my parents, and I have these memories of taking long car trips and, listening to 8-track tapes of Ray Charles, really great stuff. So the entertainer that we're bringing in is a man named Ellis Hall. He's kind of nationally recognized as one of the leading Ray Charles tribute artists. He was a friend of Ray Charles, and he's continuing to be a friend of the family, and he's a marvelous performer. So he'll be playing all of the Ray's great hits like Georgia on My Mind and Hit the Road Jack and What I Say, and a host of others.
And finally, you're closing out the Talcott Music Festival season with a symphonic tribute to the music of Journey.
Yes. So Journey, was one of those great kind of power pop rock bands of the 1980s, and they had a long string of hits, songs like "Don't Stop Believing," "Any Way You Want It," "Open Arms," "Faithfully." It was the soundtrack of a lot of people growing up in the 80s and early 90s, which includes myself, actually.
So let's talk a little bit about how you make up the programs and what goes into making the program selection and what kind of audience you're going for. It used to be a couple of years ago, the serious classical music one was always first. Now you've moved it a little bit later in the season. So what goes into that decision, and does the orchestra have a role in this at all, or is this all you, or who makes up that decision?
It's a great question, and it comes up all the time with not just with Talcott, but with our other concert series, our Masterworks and Pops and Discovery concerts, and it's a complicated formula, and it's definitely part science and part art. And here out at Talcott, it's part weather. It's kind of like the X factor. The science of it is, we're a business, and we need to generate ticket sales to remain viable, and put funds in seats, so to speak. So the science of it is going back over the history of Talcott and taking a look at the programs that performed best. And then, taking a look at what genre of music they were, maybe what position they were in the festival series, what date they were on the calendar, that kind of thing, and trying to make some conclusions from that data, which sounds very easy. The tricky thing is the data is hardly ever crystal clear. Especially out here at Talcott, there's weather considerations.
Right. Was it going to rain?
So if you look at a concert from a particular year and it didn't perform well, maybe it rained all week. And although we were able to do the concert, the ground was wet, and it didn't, people didn't want to come out. So it's kind of a complicated process, but that's part of the process. The other part is kind of artistic, to listen to feedback from our audience, feedback from our musicians, feedback from our sponsors, to kind of get a feel on what people are interested in hearing right now. In a sense, it doesn't really matter if a certain genre of music or type of concert was popular 10 years ago if it's not what people want to hear now. So you have to kind of, do what you can to get a feel on what, people are looking for now. I mean, also in the artistic category, you want to program some concerts and some music that either stretches the orchestra or brings in a guest artist that we feel is important for the orchestra to work with. The Appalachian Spring program this year is a good example. Again, we talk about featuring a really small ensemble for the piece Appalachian Spring. It's an opportunity for our musicians to stretch their muscles, and to really feature them. So there's considerations like that. And then there's always the kind of calendar considerations. This year there's kind of an odd little circumstance with the way July falls on the calendar. There's 5 Fridays. Okay. And then the first concert is the logical choice for Celebrate America because of where the 4th of July holiday falls in the week. Right. So you kind of throw all that into a big stew, and then you have to realize that you have a budget to work with. And although you might want to bring Yo-Yo Ma out to perform with the orchestra for the classical concert, it's just not financially possible. So, you obviously have business concerns to look after as well.
So, Jarek, I have a question. As a patron, I sort of like listening to music outdoors. When I was a child, I was in Maine, and Pierre Monteau had a conducting school in Hancock, Maine, and it was sort of in a shed, but mostly outside, and I've loved it ever since then. But I've always wondered, does a musician like it, or is it not like it?
It can be challenging, and I have to say that the addition of the shell, the permanent shell, made a tremendous difference, and even aside from the sound system, it just allows musicians to hear each other better. Obviously provides certain protection from the elements, but I would say since that moment, in my mind at least, I was a little bit more enthusiastic about playing those summer concerts. But I think outdoors concerts in general are really a wonderful opportunity, and for the orchestra like Hartford. And I participated in not only in concerts in Hartford, but I used to play summer music in Waterford, in Harkness Memorial Park, and those are concerts that were really well attended. So, and we do, when the weather is good, we do get a very good audience here. So we hope continue to do that, and maybe it's not in exactly the same audience that later during the year comes to the Bushnell, but still it's nice to be able to reach out to them.
Oh yeah, I mean the audience that turns out for the Talcott Mountain Music Festival is really important to the orchestra. It's a family audience. As Jarek said, there's definite overlap with some of our other concert series, but there are distinctions as well. And look, it's a great American tradition. On a beautiful evening with great weather and great music, and when everything's just right, for me personally, I just love it. I'm filled with pride of our organization and of our people and of our country. It's just a wonderful tradition, and we're so proud to be a part of it. This is a good time for me to ask for a favor, Dominique, if I may.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you and your audience to do their best to pray for 5 great Fridays of weather once again. Because last year, Jarek said, if the weather's right, we draw a great audience. Last year's festival was fantastic. We had 5 perfect weekends. And over 20,000 people came out to the Simsbury Meadows Park to enjoy the concerts. So last year, I asked everyone I knew. I was new to the orchestra and whatnot, and I said, if you want to do anything to help us, just please pray for good weather at Talcott. And it worked. So if you would allow me to ask your audience to just pray for 5 great Fridays of weather once again, it'll be another great festival.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. So Am I right? Did I read that the Hartford Symphony is the second largest orchestra in New England?
I believe so, the first being Boston Symphony.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also read somewhere that following the Boston Symphony, it's one of New England's greatest assets. So that being true, I'm looking at the whole spectrum of classical music and orchestras and reading about strikes and orchestras closing and the New York City Opera closing. What is the state of classical music now? I know you're not playing all classical music, but
sure,
this just for a discussion point of view.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great question, and the question is, what is the state of orchestral music in America in all its various forms, from the Talcott festivals to the Boston Symphony, great classical orchestras of the world. I think it depends on how you look at it. I'm a glass is half full kind of guy. I think this is a time of great opportunity. Orchestras have been forced to really take a very long, hard look at how they operate, how they do business, and what the future is going to look like. The audience demographics are changing. The typical financial model of a professional orchestra in America, if not all over the world, is that over the last 20 plus years, the rate at which operating expenses increases, and they do increase every year, far outpaces most orchestras' ability to generate additional revenue to offset those additional expenses. So it's a growing divide. So orchestras have been forced to really face this challenge, and to try to come up with creative ways to close that gap. So therein lies the opportunity. All across the country, there's orchestras doing really great imaginative work to expand their audience, to draw a more diversified audience, to take some risks on programming in the kind of music they play and the way that it's presented. There's all this experimentation going on, and we can participate in that and try to learn from our peer orchestras as well. Sure, on the downside, because of that gap I just talked about, there's extreme financial pressures, and it's basically the same pressures for all orchestras across the country, whether they're very small or very large or somewhere in the middle. I do think that orchestras will survive and thrive, and because of the reasons I said, because there is so much experimentation going on.
So you did have a bit of acrimony this year, a dispute between the musicians and the orchestra, but my guess is it wasn't solved to everybody's satisfaction, but that you're all in it together now, Jarek?
Well, I think you just have to look forward and look forward to the period of growth, and it certainly has been a very difficult time for many people, and will continue to be for many musicians. But I think if there is any way for the constructive way for the growth is just to really go together. I mean, it's basically we are all in it together, and everybody would like the orchestra to succeed.
Sure,
right.
Of course.
Right. So I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really positive things that grew out of the financial crisis that we had to address and ultimately did solve is that the public made their voice known very loud and clear. The public demonstrated a real devotion to the orchestra and a real desire to see us all succeed and to survive and thrive, and that's really encouraging and uplifting.
So before, I know we're nearing the end, before we wrap up, best way to get tickets? Do you need volunteers?
Yes, and yes.
And can people buy single, one question I get is, can people buy single table seats or two table seats? You don't have to buy a whole table, do you? I don't believe you have to buy a whole table. Okay. Our marketing manager, Amanda Savio, is just off camera, and she's shaking her head yes. So I can now say with confidence, you can buy single seats at a table.
or you can buy a full table. You can buy single seats out in the lawn, or you can buy what we call a grass pass, which is like a block of tickets for lawn seats that you can use however you wish. And the way that folks do get in touch to buy tickets for these 5 Fridays in July, July 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th, is by going online to hartfordsymphony.org or by calling, bear with me.
And we'll put it up on the screen, I think.
Here it is, 860-987-5900, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And, you know, I do want to just correct a mistake I made earlier in our conversation. I said that Adam Kerry Boyles, our assistant conductor, would be conducting the 1st, 4th, and 5th program. That is not correct. He's doing the 1st, 2nd, and 5th.
Okay. So he's doing the women one.
He's doing Celebrate America, Starlets. Carolyn Kwan is doing Appalachian Spring. A guest conductor, a wonderful gentleman named Richard Carsey, is conducting the tribute to Ray Charles. And then Adam comes back to wrap it up with the music of Journey.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Yarek. Our time is up. Thanks everyone here at SCTV behind the scenes for getting the show on the air. And finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of this show, you can always find it on our website at simsburytv.org. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for the Talk of Simsbury. Since 1984, SCTV has been the place to turn in Simsbury to watch local government in action. But we're more than local government and school meetings. SCTV is the only place where you can check out all the candidates in local elections. We have high school sports and exercise classes. Other shows keep you up on health, finance, poetry, music, and Simsbury hot topics. Now we need your help. Simsbury Community TV is embarking on a major capital fundraising campaign to bring SCTV into the 21st century. We've received a generous grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, but now we must match it. We want everyone to watch us on TV or on our website, but even if you never do, please help so that we can continue to keep your government open and you informed. Someday, when there's a crisis, you will want SCTV to be there.
Hi, my name is Charles Wolfe, President of Charles J. Wolfe Associates in Simsbury, and I hope you'll join me in supporting SCTV. Since 1984, your connection to your town, your schools, and your government.